Joining us now, let's see who's on. Debbie Dooley, Vernon Jones, running for Secretary of State, Celestine Jones of
Hi.
Concerned Veterans of America, Sally Grubbs, Debbie Dooley needs no introduction. So the gang's all here. Great to have you guys. So I just got back last week from the RNC winter meeting in Santa Barbara. And here's the good news. The Republican Party, the National Republican Committee, and the Republican Party of Georgia passed their executives, their three senior executives, Josh McCoon, Jason Thompson, and National Committee woman Amy Kramer, signed Rule 11, Debbie.
Yes.
Rule 11 means it's a big deal. What Rule 11 means, this is a special rule within the Republican National Committee that if the three senior most executives in the party apparatus of a state sign a Rule 11, that gives the party and the national organization clearance to get involved in a primary. And the primary that they're getting involved in is Burt Jones for governor. And they're doing that to stop Brad Raffensperger. So, Debbie, tell us about that.
I think it was good they signed that. And let's face the fact, it's Chris Carr is not going anywhere. He is going to lose. And so everybody knows that. And the governor's race is going to be between Brad Raffensperger and Burt Jones. So we have to stop Brad at all costs. I think it was a good thing that they signed that because Raffensperger, I mean, this guy is not a good guy. I think it will essentially, what it will do would be to allow a jump start on winning the governor's mansion. The RNC can now give money to Georgia Republican Party and they can run ads and become prepared to take on Brad Raffensperger. And hopefully, I mean, we're definitely going to have a new SOS this year too. So we'll see.
Look, I thought I was in favor of them signing that rule.
Yes.
And but it's got to be signed by all three leading executives, which are, again, State Committee man Jason Thompson, who signed it, State Committee woman, RNC State Committee woman Amy Kramer, and of course Chairman of the party Josh McCoon. They all signed it. Once they did that, then the both the national state GOP is free to get involved in that primary, and they are going to do that in supporting Burt Jones. I think that was a good idea, and I commend all three leaders for signing it. Let's get to the Secretary of State's race. There's a primary for that. My candidate, Vernon Jones. No secret there. I've endorsed him. He's the guy. Vernon, thanks for being with us. You're in a tough fight. How are you going to win this race? How do you become the nominee?
Well, John, thank you for having me, and to all your guest hosts on the show. Let me tell you, let me be clear and simple. This is a grassroots campaign. I've always run grassroots. We are crisscrossing Georgia right now. I'm at a truck stop in Middle Georgia, where I'll be going to South Georgia as well, meeting with a lot of influencers, community leaders, elected officials, small restaurants, just a number of things on our agenda. We're going to probably hit about 13 counties over the next couple of days. And again, John, the old-fashioned way, working hard. People know me. They know my name. They know I stood from day one with election integrity. I was the first and only elected official was at the very first stop to steal. So we've been saying a long time, John, you and me and others, about what happened in the 2020 elections. We're not here to relive it, but we're certainly going to make sure that it doesn't happen again. They can't beat me working, John. You know I'm a hard worker. You guys know who I am. And you know about my desire, my request, and my background, my experience to be the best Secretary of State there is. Nobody has the legislative background I have. No one has the chief executive background that I have. And you know as well as I do, that job is the chief administrator's job. But John, we're going to do something different. We're going to clean house from top to bottom in terms of what happened, who was responsible, hold some people accountable, address the conflicts, address the issues, not hide anything from the federal government or the people, make things available. But we're going to go a step farther than that, John. We see some conflicts of interest with the state elections board as well. There's a number of conflicts of interest taking place, and we're going to be addressing those, John. We want to make sure that the public trust has been restored, that the red tape is removed as it relates to the efficiency and effectiveness of that office, and we're going to open it up. We're going to disinfect in everything in that office and make it available to the public.
You know, Vernon Jones, you have been the number one advocate of election integrity in Georgia from day one, along with many of the people on this panel right now. You've never wavered. You gave up your seat in the House of Representatives for this, and you've been there the whole time. Debbie, why isn't Vernon Jones like? Why isn't everybody backing this guy? I can't think of a better Secretary of State, Debbie.
Well, because a lot of folks had already announced before Vernon announced he was running. But I think you're going to find out that Vernon's got a lot of juice. People across the state love Vernon. Uh, he's been a longtime friend of mine. And I think he'll, if elected, he'll do a better job than any of them.
Well,
And
he knows why he's running, and we had one of the candidates on. I don't know, a few months ago. I can't think of his name. I'm sorry. Nice enough fellow, but like he couldn't even articulate like why he wanted to be Secretary of State or what he would do. Vernon Jones has got a very detailed plan from day one. Clean up the voter rolls, get rid of the fraud, the whole thing. I mean, we got to be able to do that in Georgia. We already got the chain of custody issues. We've got now ballots in Fulton County that never got secured properly. We still got 30,000 ballots sitting in a warehouse that a judge ruled has to have a forensic audit. That's not happened. You get Vernon Jones the Secretary of State, all that happens. Sally, I just can't imagine why Georgia Republicans, and everybody knows where I stand. I've endorsed Vernon Jones. Like he said he was getting in, he had me at hello. Said this is the best guy for the job. Why isn't everybody in Georgia, Sally, all over this? I mean, you were the person chasing down the ballot truck, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, John. So I know that Vernon knows I love him, and I will never forget. Actually, it was at the same time I met you for the first time at the Georgia Capitol during the Senate Judiciary hearing. And Vernon, to my recollection, was the only legislator, the only guy who had been in the state legislature that was there with us, holding our hands, commiserating with us, spending the day with us. Saying, "Man, can you believe this? Thank you for being here." And he was. And I will say this about Vernon. He had a servant's heart of, can I get you anything to drink? Yep. He was there to be a comfort and just a hand holder throughout that whole process. It was new to me. And I will always thank Vernon Jones for that. I'm going to, just give credit where credit's due. And I will say that, as a state party officer, of course, we have to be impartial. So despite that, what you just explained about Rule 11, we can't endorse in the primary, anything like that. So I am impartial, but I will give credit where credit's due with Vernon. And I appreciate his support over time. He's been very supportive of me as the Cobb chair for 4 years and, as a state party officer. So I am thankful that Vernon Jones is in the fight for Georgia.
Celeste, what's not to love?
Well, good morning, everyone.
Was that a loaded question? That's called a loaded question, right?
It is a loaded question.
What's not to love? First of all, Sally met Vernon Jones me and Vernon for the first time in the same day, and remembered us. So, maybe it was politics, but Vernon, maybe Sally is just, like she never forgets handsome guys that she meets. That could be it too, right? Right, Vernon?
Let's talk.
Yes. Listen, I like the energy that you bring. Vernon Jones, you are remarkable. You are one of those people who has the rare ability to reach across the political aisle and to all people. And so you electrify the room. When you walk into the room, you own it. And quite frankly, I do like your priorities, that if you're elected, the things that you will do, you'll hit the ground running, advocating for the paper ballots, strengthening voter ID laws, limiting mail-in voting. Those are things that are definitely needed. So, I am watching this particular race closely. So good for you.
And I first met Vernon. Let me say this. I first met Vernon, and I think it was when J.C. Watts, when Vernon, you were DeKalb's CEO, and J.C. Watts wrote this book, and you co-hosted a book signing for J.C. Watts, a Republican, while you were an elected Democrat. So I think that was really good that you did that, and it shows that your ability to reach across party lines, and you are a fighter, and we need that in the Secretary of State's office. I mean, Gabe Sterling, we have to stop Gabe Sterling, little fat boy Slim, because he would be horrible.
Well, let me, if I can respond to that, I really appreciate everything that's been said by Celeste and Sal and Deb and you too, John. But this is not so much about what love has to do with it. It's about who's going to get in there, who's going to fight for the people of Georgia, who's going to make sure that election integrity is at the forefront. When you look at over 315,000 ballots based with that tabulator were not signed, when you look in where you have drop boxes that were located on non-government property, when you look at 3,000 to 5,000 people at this address and that address, when those addresses have been vacant, and when the Secretary of State's office themselves, including Gabe Sterling, they are refusing to give information to the federal government so they can do the proper investigation. What are they hiding? Having to put people through court. Even Joe Citizen cannot get an open recs request response in a decent time, if ever. And so, like I think Debbie said, day one with my legislative experience, I can hit the ground running because many of those issues are going to have to be addressed through the legislature. I know that legislature in and out. I have 12 total years in that legislature, but it also requires some executive direction. As a chief executive, I can do a lot of things through executive order, and at the same time, make sure that we bring not only that office back into the forefront in terms of election integrity and public trust, John, but you need a fighter. The liberal media hates me. Why? Because they know I'm the best suited in that general election to help all Republicans running statewide. They know that I can eat in that Democrat base. Remember, as a Democrat 26 years ago, I endorsed George W. Bush for president. If you can remember, Lynn Westmoreland was in a runoff before he even got elected with Dylan Glenn. I went down there and stood at a press conference with him in Coweta County and said, I know this man's the best man for the job, especially when they tried to play the race card with him. And so, John, here, the establishment may not be on board with me, but everyone else is. The establishment know that I'm unbought and I'm unbossed. And I'm not, I work with people, but I'm not going to be controlled by the establishment. The voters of Georgia will control me with the direction they want me to take that Secretary of State's office. And I got a good feel going across this state what people are asking for and what they want. And like you said, John, they want a fighter. And I don't back down, back off, or back away from no fight from nobody when it comes to public service in Georgia.
Hey, Vernon, I have a question. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this, and, you know, as the Secretary of State, as being the chief elections officer for the state, how do you feel about Brad Raffensperger being in charge of the election where he's running for governor? And, like, say, for example, you and the others who are running for Secretary of State, with him having been Secretary of State and being the chief elections officer over the election that you're running in?
Well, Gabe Sterling was not the Secretary of State, but Gabe Sterling played a big role in all the election fraud in 2020. I think there's a lot of conflicts of interest, even on the state board itself. You can't be on the state board and your spouse running for office. There's a lot of conflicts of interest when you're using that position to get your candidate in a room to get on program, to get access to an agenda. There's a lot of conflicts of interest. If the Georgia General Assembly, sees in its wisdom to remove the Secretary of State during elections, I have no problem with that, because it's not so much of doing something wrong, but it's the appearance. If there's the appearance of some wrongdoing, let's clean it up, because that all goes to the name of public trust. So I have no problem. You and I both know that the General Assembly has to make that call, because they're the ones who are responsible for changing election laws, and obviously can change the duties and responsibilities. But there is a constitutional requirement of the Secretary of State's office, and my job is to make sure I follow that constitutional duty to the letter and intent of the law. And anything I can do, whether they remove me or not remove me, to remove the appearance of impropriety or something not right, I want to do it. And I'm going to be coming forward to the legislature again, not only addressing the issue between the state election board and Secretary of State's office as it relates even to its own a general counsel. You can't serve two masters. You know, you got to have, each person has to have their general counsel. I understand that. But there are a number of issues that I want to go and clean up, again, in the name of restoring public trust.
Well, Sally, though, I do want to bring this out. The precedent has been set here for what you mentioned, because when Governor Kemp first ran for governor 8 years ago. Governor Kemp was the Secretary of State against Stacey Abrams. And of
Yeah.
course, the Abrams campaign accused him of cleaning up the voter rolls to her disadvantage. So that precedent has already been established in Georgia.
John, can I say one thing too? Going back to voter rolls you mentioned, there got to be some checks and balances in the system too. When you see where there's 5,000 people registered at one address or 3,000 people at another address, doesn't mean anything is wrong, any wrongdoing. But that's a red flag to investigate that, review that, to make sure that is legitimate. And right now, they're not even checks and balances. Even at the local level, John, they're more responsible for adding people, removing people based on people change their registration. But what are the requirements at the local level for these local governing election supervisors? What are they doing to look at their voter roll? That has to be discussed. That has to be debated. There's got to be some resolution or some type of ways that we can address that issue. Because right now, again, any county, they're not out there addressing the voter rolls. Their state law, what the Secretary of State is supposed to do as it relates to election laws, but that's got to be debated. It's got to be discussed. We can never have a perfect election. When I heard Raffensperger, and when I hear Gabe Sterling talk about a perfect election, and with the tabulators not being sound, that sign, I should say, that is an error. That's not an error. That's a term that your lawyer give you to keep you from saying that you up. That's what that is. And so let's be clear about this. There are things the Secretary of State is not doing because he's running for governor now. And you have Gabe Sterling, that's the chicken or the fox that was in the hen house. Can you believe that? Now he wants to be Secretary of State. He demonized you and me and everybody else, going on national TV, became a celebrity with CNN and MSNBC. And now he wants to come and run the election after saying, or being elected Secretary of State after saying there were no election issues. That dog just won't hunt. And John, I've said from day one, there's a dead cat on the internet line, and we aim to find out when we get elected Secretary of State.
Debbie, how does Vernon get in this runoff?
How does Vernon, to keep doing what he's doing, get out there? He needs to raise money. I mean, you can go to Vernon's campaign website and donate to him. He's working. He is out there working hard. He's visiting counties after counties. And he actually is coming up with solutions, not just platitudes, actual real solutions. And I think he would make a very good Secretary of State. And I think can you imagine Vernon Jones and Gabe Sterling on a debate stage?
No, I can't wait for that. I got to go down there and cover that and carry it live. That would be so much fun.
Yeah. It would. We have to just gather, have a debate watching party, and have some alcoholic beverages to really enjoy it. And
Dr. Oz calls that social lubrication. He says it's good for the spirit and good for the soul.
John, let me interject this if I can. I hear Debbie, and Debbie is, I tell you, she's Debbie Dooley. I'm the only one that actually oversaw a local elections. As the chief executive officer of DeKalb County, I wasn't involved in the actual day-to-day, but I had to make sure they had adequate machines. I had to make sure they had adequate training. Had to make sure that precincts were balanced, where there was not an overload, so it could create those issues where there are backlogs or long lines. I had to make sure those machines were working and working properly, stored properly. I'm the only one that has the experience that actually oversaw local elections. All local elections, or all elections held at the local level, not at the Secretary of State's office. Secretary of State should be providing leadership and make sure everyone's in accordance with the law. But I know, and when you see long lines, and the left want to call that voter suppression, that's not voter suppression. That's a management issue. Either you didn't have enough people, they weren't properly trained, and we have to look at who we're hiring. A lot of these people are just getting these jobs just during that season, but they don't have any real skill set. Many of them don't. Many do. To make sure that they're following the law to the letter, and that they have at least certain basic skills to make sure that this election is going in accordance with the state law. And we have to look at paying them properly. If they're making, you get what you pay for. So there's a lot of things that have to be evaluated as relates to Secretary of State's office. I manage almost 8,000 employees with about a $3 billion budget. The Secretary of State's office is $345 million with about 45 million with 345 employees. I've been a chief administrator, and that's what this job requires. But it requires having executive experience and legislative experience to make sure that you can, you can run that office efficiently and effectively while working with that legislature.
I have a question, Vernon. You're familiar with the ERIC database
Yes.
that our Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, refuses to pull Georgia out of. A lot of other red states have pulled out of the data sharing with ERIC because there's a lot of different nuances you have to agree to. If you're elected Secretary of State, would you pull Georgia out of ERIC?
Yeah, first thing I want to find out, why hasn't he pulled Georgia out? What is the logic?
Great.
What's the reason behind it? It's something we don't know. And then look, if everybody else, like you said, are pulling out, what is it holding Georgia there? Is there something going on back room? I don't know. I'm not accusing anybody, but there's got to be a reason for that. And while we on Dominion, let's look at Dominion. There are a lot of states that don't even want to look in the direction of Dominion. Why did we even get in Dominion from the start? Why we're not using paper ballots? Earmarked so we can do a better audit versus the current system where you're auditing images. And Garland, there's so many of those other experts that are out there. Why are you pushing them away and calling them conspiracy theories and not embracing them and listening, learning what they have to say, make a full evaluation and make those findings available to the General Assembly so we can make some changes, because they're going to require the appropriations to allow us to purchase new equipment, whatever, at the same time, even changing election laws. And so that again, that's what my experience coming in day one, knowing how to work with the various groups, know how to put together a team of people, experts, inviting everybody to have a seat at the table, including the laypersons, so we can have a system again that people can feel proud of in Georgia, that we're leading and we're not following. We know we're the laughing stock. Every time you turn around, there's another post about something else going on with Georgia elections. And another thing, so I want to be clear about this. I will not secretly take anybody without their knowledge to use it for political purposes. If you want to contest an election, you can contest an election, but to secretly, Gabe Sterling and others, knowing that they were secretly taping the president, without at least making an announcement, look, this phone call is subject to being recorded, just so we can make sure the record isn't distorted. No, but this was done in darkness and nurtured in ignorance. And I'm not going to tolerate anything like that. Even when you call your creditors, they say this call may be, recorded. So let's take the politics out of it and do what's right for the people of Georgia.
Sally, before we let Vernon go, what is the deal with the QR codes on the ballots? What's the deal with that?
Well, according to Senate Bill 189, the QR codes are to be removed by July 1st. And now, there was a Senate hearing last week, I'm sure you probably saw, where Greg Dolezal was questioning the secretary, asking what hadn't been done. And then the secretary says, well, because you didn't fund it. You want to get to the chicken and the egg, and it's always, well, I didn't buy the milk because you didn't give me the money, and I didn't give you the money because you never buy the milk. You're going down to the corner and buying crack. So there's that issue. It's the rock and the hard place argument, which really doesn't exist. The bottom line is that the software was never updated for Dominion. The password is out there. The system is compromised. We need to go to hand-marked paper ballots. We need proper audits. And that, it appears to me that the Secretary of State is doing everything he can to stand in the way of that. And it's not fair to the people of Georgia. And, so they're supposed to be removed by July 1st. That's what Senate Bill 189 says. But, Raffensperger has not done anything that I can see to comply with the law. And
but they'll still be around for the May primary and for the runoff.
Right.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, John, I am very not happy about that as a Georgia citizen. There's a lack of confidence. We have a crisis of confidence in our state with voters. Then you have a lot of voters that say, why vote? Because they can manipulate it or whatever anyway. So there's some candidates who say, shh, don't tell them that or they won't get out and vote, and I think Vernon personally is doing the right thing by getting out ahead of it and saying, these are things that have to be addressed. And, again, as being a state election board member, I'm very concerned about the way we vote. I'm very concerned about, still having QR codes in May. And then we're going to get to July 1st. They're going to say, and this all rests with the legislature. Vernon's right. The legislature has got to act. There's a way they can fast track a bill to take care of it for the May primary. I have suggested that to several legislators to fast track a bill to resolve and get
What'd
us
they
to
say?
hand-marked paper ballots. There are some who are for it, and there are some who are dubious. You know, I love our legislators. Most of them. I spoke before the Senate Ethics Committee last week, and they're very good reception there. I think sometimes when people don't understand something, it's hard for them to get their head around it.
Right.
And this is, they've made our voting so complicated, people's eyes will just kind of glaze over.
I mean, what
They
you
don't
guys are
get it.
trying to do is just simply go to paper ballots where you vote and you put it in the box, and there's a hand count of the paper ballots that are done, and there's a chain of custody, and everybody knows what it is. And if you have to go back, you can go back. This QR codes, Dominion machines. I mean, the whole thing has been a scam from day one. No one really knows. You can never go back. You never know where they came from. And we still got these 30,000 ballots sitting in a warehouse in Atlanta that are they're supposed to be a forensic audit. Judge ordered it, still not done. And so the beat goes on. Vernon, I want to wish you the best. We've endorsed your campaign. You're by far, without question, miles ahead of anybody else in this race, supremely qualified to be Georgia's Secretary of State, and the one guy that's going to clean this up. People want to follow your campaign, donate to you, Vernon. How do they do that? Where do they go?
Well, thank you very much, John. I really appreciate it. And Sally, that legislature is important, but they a lot of times have to be educated because they're not used to running elections full time. They don't know a lot about it. So educating them, giving them the information they need so they can make the right decisions is important.
Right.
And I've been there. I understand that because anybody can come up with a law. Anybody can tamper with the legislation, not knowing the issue. So, but John, you're anybody on your show listening, they can go to Vernon Jones, which is SOS2026.com. That's Vernon Jones, SOS2026.com. Vernon Jones, SOS2026.com. And I want to thank all your panelists for on and what you all doing to educate Georgians about what's going on, what's at stake. I can tell you right now, so goes Georgia, so goes this country.
Yes.
And we have to have a Secretary of State that is the firewall. Because you can have a weak legislature, a weak governor, a weak lieutenant governor. But if you have a solid Secretary of State, that's the firewall on election integrity. That's his sworn duty and responsibility to make sure elections are free, fair, and transparent, and not bend to the liberal media or those far leftists to take over the election. No, we're not going to do that if I'm fortunate enough to get elected. So I ask for everyone's support. Vernon Jones, SOS2026.com.
Thank you, Vernon. Thanks for being
Thank you.
with us.
Thank you.